Hey y'all, I'm going to do a quick overview of different ways that you can use digital editing to fracture and distort and rearrange an image. Now I'm going to move pretty fast and there's a lot, but hopefully this will give you just enough of a taste where you can get started and of course rely on your peers and me for support. So let's jump right in. I've already got my images here. They are JPEG format. They are large resolution. Today I'll be using an image of the artist Basquiat. Here's a nice photo of him. If you need to crop, you can head to the crop tool. Actually, let's make this window bigger. Boop. Head to the crop tool and remove some of the background if you don't need it. But you might want to keep a little bit of extra space. That looks good. And I'll hit return. And now let's talk about our options. First, I'm going to zoom in with Control plus and minus. You're going to want to use those a lot today. We're going to start by talking about just making selections to copy and paste with. So there's a couple selection tools. We're going to start with this rectangle, and you can right click on all of these for more options, but we're going to keep it simple. So let's say I want to start duplicating some portions here. What I can do is select an area, and I'll use Control C, which is copy, and then in a minute I'll do Control V, which is paste. Now before I do that, notice there's only one layer, right? It's the image, this background. But when I hit Control V and paste, a new layer appeared. Now what that is it duplicated only my selection. If I were to take off my eyeball, you can see this layer here is just that copied and pasted selection. I can go to the move tool, that's the arrow. Make sure you're on auto select, by the way, and start to move this around. Now if I go back to my background, I can continue to make selections with that same tool. Maybe I want something, a slice like this, Control C, Control V, and you'll see that they're all gonna start to appear over here, okay? Oops, wrong one. Another selection tool is, if you go here right underneath the rectangle, you'll get Lasso Select. This can give you some more organic selection. So if I just click and drag, you can kind of draw an area and it'll select that. And same thing, Control C. Oops, if it says it's empty, it's because I'm on the wrong layer. I need to go to my background. Okay, Control C, Control V. And now the shape that it created, let's move this, is organic, okay? So from here, you can just start to play, if you don't like something, if you change your mind, whatever, you can delete it just by selecting that layer and deleting. You can obviously rearrange the placement with that move tool. You can also change the size. Maybe I want to do edit, free transform. This is the best way. Now there's a shortcut too, if you can remember it, but if not, edit, free transform. That'll bring up this little window here. And I can change the size. Now if I go bigger, it might get pixelated, so be careful, but let's try it. You also need to hold shift when you change the size. That will constrain proportions. If I don't hold shift, this is gonna happen. It's gonna get warped, which maybe you wanna do, but if not, let's do Control Z to remove that. You wanna hold shift if you wanna keep those proportions, okay? So perhaps I wanna put a third eye here. Again, maybe I wanna make it quite large, so it feels different from the rest. These are the kind of experimentations that I like to do. Now you can keep these shapes as they are. You can also erase portions of them if you want it to be more organic. For example, if I go to my eraser tool, which is right here, I'll go up to my brush settings and bring down the hardness, maybe make it a little bit larger. You could do things like this. Now notice I've selected the layer with my eye, so maybe I want to blend it in a little bit more so it's more natural looking instead of those clear fragments. You could play with an eraser. By the way, another nice shortcut for brushes is if you use the bracket keys on your keyboard, that will make your brush larger or smaller. Okay, so you get the idea. Lots to play with here, whether you want it to be more organic or more defined. Okay. I'm gonna actually delete these experiments for just a second. Boop, boop. And now talk about something similar, only using a grid. So let's say you wanna play with copying and pasting portions of your artwork, but you like, here's an example from our slideshow. Bring this over. Something like this, where there's an actual nice, neat, clean grid. You can imagine how it's gonna be hard to select those exact perfect squares using Photopea. So instead of what I'm gonna do is Google image splitter, okay? Oops. The first one that pops up will probably be this one, this postcron.com. Let's click on that. And here it'll split the image for you perfectly. So I'm gonna do upload image. We don't need this ad. No, thank you. I'm gonna bring in my Basquiat. And here you can choose how many columns and rows, the selection size. Maybe I only wanna work with a small portion. You can play with that. If I wanna do something similar to the artwork we just looked at. But once you've made those selections, in this case 4x4, I'll have 16 pieces. When I hit split image, it's gonna cut this selection into those 16 individual squares. Oops, get rid of that too. And in just a second, I'll be able to download those files, which are now individual files. If you don't see them pop up here, you can check in your downloads folder, and you should see kind of a crazy looking zip folder, right? So there's the one I just made, and now all those 16 selections are nice and tidy. So let's go back to Photopea. Now notice I do have still my source image here. So whenever you're starting, bring your source image in nice and big so that your the project file size is large. If you just grab an individual square, you'll have a really tiny project size. Now I can grab some, or maybe I want to grab all of these. You can select all with Control A. And I'm going to drag these in. And what it's done now, it looks like one. But if I go to the Move tool, I can see there's actually, oops, let's go back here. Every single square has been moved and each one is its own layer. So I can use all of those same techniques that we just talked about, only this time I've got perfect squares. If I want to change the size of all of these squares at the same time, I can click on the first one, hold Shift, click on the top one. That's going to select all of those squares. And I can go and do my transformation. Maybe I want to make them, let's go a little smaller. Let's change the height to 90% and the width to 90%. I don't know, whatever, you can decide, all right? From here, you can start to align them however you'd like. If I want to do something similar to the artwork we saw, maybe I'll obscure the face or make a row of these. Perhaps you want to get rid of the background image and just sort of have a puzzle piece sort of assemblage, which we can crop down later, okay?